So it's been a millennia, really, since I've filmed anything of my own. I obviously haven't posted my own content vlog-wise for a very, 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 very long time. And I believe I'm in a good enough state now to talk about some of what's been going on. Today is my birthday. Today I turned 28. And it feels just fully foreign to me because, one, like I almost didn't get here this year again. I know that's a lot for some viewers to be listening to. So I'm sorry if you find things like that triggering and difficult to listen to. If you have your own experiences, I'm certainly not trying to. If you feel like you're going to have a negative experience based on things that I might be sharing on that topic, feel free to click off at any time. And I will see you on the next video. When you suffer a major loss, just the quickest summation in the world, I was raised essentially as an only child. I do have older siblings, but they were long gone and out of the house pretty much since long before I came around, basically. Because of that, I do have some nieces and nephews who are roughly my age or not too different from my age. And that's just a quick summation because I feel like being, just a mommy and me dynamic, it was me and her against the world, is really how it was made to make me feel. Sorry, I honestly can't breathe in this house without getting interrupted more often than not. So yeah, today is my birthday. It's my first birthday without my mom. I fortunately was able to... Sorry, my cat's driving me fucking nuts, going in and out. So that looks like it's solved now. I've been trying to continue to do creative things. I've been trying really hard to, after taking a bunch of time and space away from doing anything mystical and magical, I've been trying to slowly revisit doing tarot and Reiki again. That in itself has been really challenging, just all of the emotions tied into that alongside that. And I think a lot of my pausing was like my fear of I don't want to... I don't know that everybody is going to understand this sentiment, but really I just didn't think I was ready to hear from my mom if I pulled my own cards. I really just didn't want... I wasn't in a good headspace enough to figure out what would happen, and I really let like that type of hypothetical really kind of took over. And I've been just really struggling from top to bottom. Like this time last year, I was away on a birthday trip for someone and got a call the second day, like on a New Hampshire weekend, went away on a Friday night. In the middle of a Saturday afternoon, I got a call from my sister that said, "Are you on your way to the hospital?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" It's just still... Because of the timing of the other person's birthday, it was, close enough to mine that or it was like, mine was like the Monday holiday and we went up the weekend after, or something like that. So I'm in the middle of playing cards and stuff with people who aren't even relevant anymore because they stopped caring about me. I'm literally, at the time in a room full of friends, taking shots and doing card games and like having a good safe time in the middle of a snow lodge area when I get this call from my sister, and it literally, like, you get that type of phone call and your body shuts down, shuts off, and my whole stomach sank because she was admitted to an ICU, and it was just all through phone calls because there was no way I had any type of just because of the times we live in right now, they weren't letting people in even when they were nearby. So that's kind of how I've made peace with that. And plenty of you watching might have already experienced that. When your relative's in an emergency room right now, they really do not let visitors in. If you're in an assisted living facility, they're really limiting visitors and making sure you have those vaccination cards. But even at the time, early last year, the vaccinations were not available. They really weren't. Like the first, until later on in March and April, there wasn't anything available. And then obviously for my circumstances, my family circumstances, it was all just too late because there was still, maybe not the beginning of the pandemic, but still early enough on where there was not, that we didn't have the same understanding that we do even now. Not that we understand much more, but we have a much, much better idea of what works and what doesn't work, and what we're dealing with in terms of variations and so on. Obviously, there's still the unknown factor, but January and February of last year was a lot closer to the Wild West of absolute full madness. And as I've talked about in some of my previous videos, I don't know how much of my content is still up right now. A lot of it is privated right now as I go back through it and kind of reassess the direction that my channel might be going in at this point, going into 2022. But I was in the wedding industry when things kicked off. I was in wedding fashions, and obviously with March of 2020 was like right before St. Patrick's Day weekend, everything really just fully shut down in my area. So like March 15th maybe, feels right. And obviously with, limiting immediately, not going outside to do anything, weddings were really like the first things to go. Weddings, bar mitzvahs, everything. So I guess the point I was trying to make with that is that I've had a little bit of job insecurity since then, and that's really why I've tried to consistently doing more trainings, consistently following my language programs through different apps and programs, just kind of to keep my brain busy. But it's a blessing and a curse because I have had the time to, and the flexibility to deal with things differently. Like my siblings are not local by any means. I'm was about 10 or 15 minutes from my mom, but I'm also the only one who was in the same state. I'm the only person in Massachusetts. So never mind, you know, anything else. So sorry, this has all just been really challenging for me to even start to think about again, and I'm trying to do it in as graceful and as cohesive a way as I can manage, but it's been really, it's leveled me. Because so it all came out that my mom was in public when she collapsed, and she wasn't shopping, she wasn't doing anything else, just it happened to be that my mom was at a funeral service for someone. I'm gonna try and leave them out because I don't know how much I want to talk too much about other people. I really just want to stick to the points I'm making here. So I was at a relative's funeral that she collapsed. She started having some type of breathing difficulty. My mom was asthmatic and she had some different things going on, so her having shortness of breath or having a coughing fit was not abnormal. Like, this is a woman who has had cough drops in her purse and at the ready and never goes anywhere without a bottle of water because she did have like diabetic dry mouth on top of those other things. Like, she really did her best to be prepared and have stuff in the car and have some things on her at all times in her coat pockets and so on. So, okay, breathing abnormality for a person who's 70 years old. So she was in the emergency room for about 2 days, and they moved her to an ICU. She was put on an intubator, ventilator? She was intubated and put onto a ventilator. I'm probably saying it wrong at this point. So this all takes place. She goes to the ICU. I obviously was, again, away on a trip. I think I came back this Sunday afternoon or Sunday night. So basically one full day after I received the information, and meanwhile, doctors are trying to call me, other relatives are trying to call me. I'm trying to figure out who might not have been contacted yet so I can kind of fill in the blanks. And let them know, because my mom is like, was a huge building block of our family and really brought lots of people together. So because of that, because everybody was near and dear to her heart, she always took the time to make everybody feel special. It really, to me at that time, was like, okay, who in my phone contacts hasn't been reached out to? Who can I text in an okay manner? Because obviously not everybody texts if you're of a certain age. And then there's also, you realize how many contacts that you don't have in your phone that you might have written down on a physical piece of paper in your desk somewhere but never actually made it to your phone because you call them so infrequently. So there's the ups and downs that came with people traveling, and eventually after some time of trying to figure things out, the ICU still had the same sort of policy of the emergency room, that people were just simply not permitted in, regardless of. It became clear, they repeated it to us a few times, that the only time that the family would be allowed in is to say goodbye. And after 2 grueling weeks of realizing my mom could not be off the breathing machine for a significant amount of time, enough for them to run the other scans that they would have needed to run, because when you're doing a CT scan and certain different things that, again, I don't know enough about, step 1 is that you have to either be able to go into the MRI CAT scan or to be off of the machinery long enough to have an x-ray done. So this is all in sort of a roundabout way. This is a way of saying that because of the ups and downs that we dealt with and a lot of the stark realizations we had as a group, as of the 4 of us, it was, I don't know. So we're talking about the distance between like the end of January 26th, 27th, and she passed away on Super Bowl Sunday last year, with literally in the worst snowstorm of creation. And the difficulty with that was that we had all, amongst the 4 of us, decided that, okay, this isn't what she would have wanted to happen. Like, she wouldn't have wanted to be on machinery even this long. But because of not being able to find certain documentations, it just... Anyway, so we, amongst the 4 of us, decided that it was going to be time for us to make that type of a decision, and that we were going to get together the Monday, Tuesday, whatever, so people who were already traveling to the area had to quickly change plans and get on earlier flights, because I got a call sometime very early on Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday. Again, it just means very little. Football has very little meaning for me specifically, but it has even more of a, I guess, triggering is the word. I have a really difficult time, again, being this time of year and hearing people, you know, big game day sort of stuff is really, it's weighing so heavily on me. And that's not something anybody can control. That's just, I'm going to need to figure out how to deal with those triggers. And that's something I've struggled with consistently since, you know, so it was, we went through just every holiday has been really difficult. It was St. Patrick's Day without my mom, and April brought Easter without my mom, and it just has never fully stopped. Like, Christmas this past year was grueling, and I had had Christmas without her the year prior because that was a safety decision that we had made as a just amongst ourselves between family. We had decided to follow all of the safety protocols that we could. If I was in her house dropping off groceries or doing laundry or something for her, like doing her tasks, fixing whatever, stuff that you do for your mom, I always had a face covering on. We had, made sure that she was stocked up on food, beverages, whatever, and really it came down to, like, if we got together, it was only going to be outside, in the fresh air. Sorry, I'm going out tonight, so you can see there's makeup everywhere. This is sort of my pre-getting dressed shirt. This is Try Guys merch. So, yeah. My mom was not somebody who took good or adequate even care of herself. Unfortunately, she got numerous notes from numerous doctors over the years about what she needed to change and different things to change it. And just everything else was the priority. Everybody else was the priority. This is the woman who was constantly taking care of or watching or supervising me or grandchildren or nieces and nephews and grandnieces and grandnephews, as generationally she was the matriarch who was always doing and overextending herself for other people. And not that anybody else was ungrateful for those things. Like, I think that we all, in our own ways, we have this image of this wonderful matriarchal person, but I think that as much as all of that is true, I think that it was really hard for her to be an older mom with a child who had new and different, maybe not different because she had already raised 3 kids, but new demands for her age category. To give you an example, I believe I would have to go back and, without overthinking it too much, I'm pretty sure that I was 16 the year that my mom turned 60. Significant age gap, significant priority gap. And so when my mom turned 70 last October, 2 Octobers ago, oh my gosh, 2 Octobers ago, I was 26, and I think that because I was her, there was a large portion of me being like a small person, or before I was born, where one of my brothers was calling me like the baby Jesus because I could do no wrong, and that was his joke, is that I was perfect. And if you asked my mom up until the last day that she could communicate, it was, oh, Erin never cried when she was a baby, she was so wonderful, she was so this, and like really just truly about that phase of life did not have a single bad thing to say. Never, up until, not even, I would say she maintained that, up until age 6 or 8 or something. She was a perfect child, was not this, was not that. And I think part of that is, obviously as a parent you get to have selective memories, but I think it was really difficult. Without going into too much detail, my dad put her through a lot emotionally and physically and mentally. Put all of us through a lot. So to say like it was just me and her and she was still trying to process all of the things that had gone on and never really... My mom had a lot of friends like through work and stuff, and she treated our family like our family was all her best friends, so it wasn't like she wasn't talking, it wasn't socializing, didn't have that. But I think over the years that just became more difficult as like my siblings began to focus on their own family. That was a difficult shift for her. And I saw that happen because for a good portion of my life, I feel like she would overshare more like adult things with me, like not anything, you know, super taboo, but just like way more things that definitely don't concern kids, topics about like other people's marriages or other people's financial status. And I think it was just like this compounded thing where she either couldn't get a hold of one other friend or something on the phone, because again, this is, you know, we're talking about dial-up internet times for a certain early period. So if somebody was on the phone or on the computer, they couldn't connect adequately, and it wasn't in the same time frame that she needed or wanted, so she would just come into my room and kind of like vent about all these things. So it really just... it became like I knew stories about people more than I knew people. Like I probably know more stories about my family members as they were younger because they're told second and third hand through my mom to me, and things that, you know, those people themselves probably forgot or don't remember or would say that that didn't quite happen that way. It's like those pieces don't quite go together. So that was, you know, I think that there was a large part of my life where, because my mom couldn't do a lot of physical heavy lifting, again, due to age and also not taking the best care of herself. Like I was always taking the trash out down to the street. I was always, like, there were lots of times where I was making dinner at quite a young age. Again, this is not me complaining, I'm just like, these are things that I felt like I was doing for the household. And because my mom grew up with a lot of siblings when she was small and then became a mom to 3 kids early on in life, she developed this concept that it's not unique to her, but she used to say it all the time. It was like, oh, that's what the boys are for. Like, mowing the lawn is what the boys are for, and chopping down branches is what the boys are for. So I'd be like, okay. After decades and decades of that was so deeply ingrained in her, she'd be like, oh yeah, that's what the boys are for. Go shovel the driveway, Erin. And I'm like, okay, this is... stuff like that is just... I think that part of the biggest journey for all adults, any adult who's trying to process things from their parents in a healthy way, is that your first step is to forgive your parents. And as much as there was so much love and admiration, and I think that not everybody's love looks the same, from person to person, from parent to child, from parent to other parent. No human's love looks the same, but like for me, because it was such a one-on-one life experience, it's I think that my mom and I had like a mutually codependent relationship, I think, where like I would have whatever was going on at school, and then she would have whatever was going on at work, and then I was latchkey kidding myself or over at a friend's house, but like at the end of the day, I'd be like, hey, here's everything that went on at school, and she'd be like, here's, you know, without like oversharing clients or anything, like my mom would tell stories about coworkers or whatever had occurred during that day. And I think through that, I have a very, 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 very high expectation of like, love means you spend this amount of time together, or love means, like, it's a very linear thing. And this is, again, just a super oversimplification. Like, this was my life until I moved out at 18, 19, whenever I moved out to my first apartment, because I was an idiot. It was just a thing that I thought people do, you know, turn a certain age and you meet a certain person and you move out, and then it's whatever. I am trying my best to stay on topic, so let me try again and do that. And I think that not only was me moving out in college age, late high school age, really difficult for her, like, we would still talk and still go to lunch and still go to whatever whenever I could, but that was a remarkably difficult thing for her. And I think that it became like very guilt trippy. I'm choosing my words carefully here because I don't think that it was intentional. I think it was just like she was so accustomed to me and her, me and her, and me and her, like, for my whole life, since it was just me and her starting at like 4 or 5, and then till I left the house, because she had already filled her empty nest with me, and I was like her winter baby, her winter of her life baby. She used to always say, like, the life seasons, like, I just happened a lot later in her life. There was a very high expectation of, like, if I wouldn't return calls within a certain time frame, or if I wouldn't return a text within a certain time frame, because there was a point where, like, I had my own apartment, I was working 4 different jobs, or, like, I had my own apartment and I was working and doing, like, whatever I was doing. There's plenty of times where I was not the best at communicating back to her, which is, I think that's just what you're supposed to do. Like, you grow into 18, 19, 20, 21, and you're doing, like, adult things. You're not always, like, your focus isn't supposed to solely be communicating back to your parents, like, as soon as humanly available. And I never thought of it as something that she would take personally, but it definitely became, like, unfortunately, in my mom's understanding of things, like, everything anybody did or didn't do to her, with her, around her, was personal. It was, oh, everybody's moved so far away, or, you know, all these different things, which I think some of that is natural, but also because she didn't have a great deal of her own hobbies outside of like movies and TV, and for a while she was going for walks, but like she really didn't have like her core support group was either people that she worked with or me, and the anxieties, separation, whatever's. It's, I don't know. We're now so far removed from those days, but it's something that I've been certainly thinking about a lot because everything I just have a very new understanding, and I think for people who have parents who've passed away, that's part of the process. Like, you're grieving or going through these emotions, you're gonna be angry, you're gonna be sad, you're gonna be like, why was things like this? Why am I the way that I am? And I unfortunately have been to so many funerals. I've been to, like, I don't have grandparents. I lost my dad. Not that he was a huge part of my life, but he died when I was 19. And I found out about it in the newspaper, which was a whole different problem. But so I had already gone through the agony of, like, my parent is dead. But it was when my father passed away, it was more like I was mourning the loss of the relationship that I hoped would happen someday. Like, I really wanted him to be like, hey, sorry you got treated this way, or I'm sorry that I wasn't around to whatever, little kid concerts and basketball court stuff and, you know, whatever I was doing at the time. It's like, I really thought, like, as an adult person, he would be there to do, like, the walk me down the aisle thing and the fucking whatever dads do. So the loss of that sucked, but it wasn't the loss of what was. And right now I'm really struggling with accepting that, you know, your parents are people. They're not super good, super bad. I think people do the best with what they have. And my mom certainly went through so many different trauma flavors herself that I think there wasn't even a verbiage for, because generationally, if you look at when she was born in 1950, like, there was no such thing as, like, things just weren't talked about the same way. So I think that a lot of things that we are understanding happened to previous generations. They weren't talked about as, like, something bad when they were happening at the time. It was, oh, somebody told me to keep a secret and I don't, whatever. And as a kid at that time, you don't necessarily have the same understanding of, like, those are incorrect things. Like, as a small child, you should never be told to keep secrets from your parents in any shape or form. But again, it's because my mom was a boomer. Her mom certainly didn't have the understanding necessarily to teach her those correct things. So it's like you have to kind of, like, walk yourself back through, like, my Nana's generation was, like, you just belt your kids, or you just whip the kids, or whatever the switches were from the trees. And that's just what you did when the kids were bad, or like the physical stuff of any flavor. And along with that is the education that like verbal abuse is wrong. So like verbal abuse is abuse. We all know that here and now in 2022, which is, I can't believe we're here. So the expectations that you put, and hopefully generationally these roles will evolve even further to say, like, I've seen some of it in the newer generations, are like the first thing that comes to mind is like, I know somebody who's like, their mom's first thing they taught them as like a small person was like, it's my body and you can't touch it. And even me, as like a kid who grew up in the early 90s, like, excuse me, I didn't grow up in the early 90s, but like when I was born in 94, so going to school through like kindergarten, preschool, and like grades 1 and 2, like I would have loved to have had it's my body and you can't touch it. Like those are definitive things that I wish I had had for myself. Like it's a sentence that shouldn't be revolutionary, but it absolutely is, because that changed the tone of, you have bodily autonomy, nobody can violate that, and it's like, just that is so critical, and it shouldn't be revolutionary. But I don't know, household to household all across America, you can't, like, there's no parenting police that shows up and says, oh, you've taught your kid how to emotionally regulate, right? Or you have, you know, you're teaching them like fundamental basic human decency. No, you've just been kicking the shit out of them. Oh, good. Like, I've seen firsthand that like Child and Family Services in, at least in this area, I can't speak to everywhere, but like unless there's a loaded gun on the kitchen table, like that is the level they need to see for something to be done. Nothing will change otherwise. Like, they will recommend things, they will do like house checks, but they will not, like, there's no permanent follow-up method of like, change this or else. So I think that because of the lack of understanding of just how to raise children in general, like, you don't kick the shit out of your kids. Like, that's shouldn't be revolutionary, but that's obviously what was happening in the 60s and 50s, late 50s, over and over and over again. Like, that's just what people did. I think that that taught those people who experienced that they were less deserving of love, or less, like, that their expectation of who was going to treat them nice was like, if the, you know, the bar for how your parents are supposed to treat you was like under the ground, then this bar was just like on the ground and nobody had to jump over it. It was just like, you step over it. And I'm hoping that came across the right way, but like, there was no hurdle for somebody to jump over. So I think that in that sphere where those things happened to her, there's really no secret about that. That part at least is openly talked about and joked about, and whatever people are doing to cope with those things. I think that then there was such a standard for me to be, like, my expectations, because of what she had taught me. It's like, oh, you're worthy of this, that, and the other. Make sure somebody gives you the sun, the moon, and the stars, like all the things that are in 90s R&B songs that, like, you know. But the idea being, like, you're a Disney princess was very, like, a thing that happened. And I know I'm not unique in that. Like, there are a lot of people who grew up in the 90s that I'm friends with who are, like, a couple years older or younger than me, that those VHS kids were very much taught, like, do the superhero thing, or do the, you know, if you act like these Disney princes, and, like, that's where, like, oh, you know, people are attracted to uniforms and stuff, and certain types of behavior. If you act more arrogant and more entitled, then you'll get more out of life. Or, like, for women, I think the extension of that was like, okay, so get treated like a Disney princess, which obviously you realize eventually is unattainable, because you're not going to get treated like a Disney princess. You're not going to get treated like you're in a Hallmark movie. Like, unfortunately, most of us are not Marilyn Monroe, much to my chagrin. And, like, you basically realize that it becomes like, yes, this is what things should be, but that's not how it is, because I haven't been treated like that, even though that's what I was raised for. So I think the extension of that is, like, the Sex and the City sort of thing, or, like, you know, I'm trying to think of something else that would have been, like, the next sort of time frame. There's a bunch of stuff like that now where it's like, oh, the woman's getting revenge because of not being treated well. So, Sex and the City was at least more attainable, because you just graduated from, okay, I'm never going to be treated like this, because no single man is treating me this way. So, I'm going to do whatever I want, and somebody's going to meet me here. Like, I know that there's right now a huge discussion surrounding, like, the Carrie Bradshaw character as a whole is very, very flawed and very, like, Karen-y. These are things that we see now, but they were revolutionary at the time. Like, Sex and the City as a show was so unique at the time, and it's a framework for a lot of female TV now. Is those shows wouldn't exist unless there was such a widely received, like, shock and awe, and ultimately, like, acceptance of, like, the Sex and the City generation of women. And I think there is also a huge problem with that. Like, if you're a woman who's just going around, excuse me, this is going to, again, it's an oversimplification. If you can just sort of ride this wave with me, I'd really appreciate it. If you're running around like Carrie Bradshaw had that, like, at least one really big affair which was integral to the plot, right? And, like, the over-objectification of the opposite sex after it was sort of like the answer to being, like, women being overly objectified by men. It was now, here's Sex and the City, we're gonna do the exact same thing and, like, see how people, like, taste of their own medicine. But it was so, again, this was taboo and whatever, and it was on HBO, I think, like, first generation HBO or whatever, and this is just what was. So, if you're teaching women, like, okay, you can't realistically purchase your way into a Disney princess relationship, you can realistically purchase your way through Manolo Blahniks and, like, Birkin bags and, like, Louis Vuitton. So there's the over-sensationalism of, like, real people being, like, I say real, but like the Paris Hilton persona of like, I'm gonna do whatever, party whatever, drink whatever, and the sensationalism of that type of lifestyle is like, no, you can't, like, there is no letter you're gonna get to find out that you're Princess of Genovia from, like, Princess Diaries, but you can find somebody who loves you enough to purchase you, like, whatever object thing. Like, I think that's the sensationalism of, like, women love handbags and shoes, and, like, unfortunately plenty of people hold that sort of thing in, like, even today, it's the high regard. And it's like, yeah, sure, some women love those things, but plenty of people, even the ones that do love those things, it's like, you love those things because they are status symbols. You love your Hermes bag because the next person next to you might have a Michael Kors bag, and you can have that moment of, like, you're, like, thrilled that you're, for that one moment, you have somebody looking at your bag being like, oh, I want that bag. And, like, that's what you're buying that for the moment of somebody else seeing you on the street or something. And that's where, like, the rent a handbag, rent the runway, like, the idea that these things, even if they're unattainable, are attainable. If you want to, like, go away for the weekend, you can rent these bags and rent these dresses and rent, like, your bridesmaids or your own bridal gown. I think a lot of companies you can rent bridal gowns now. I don't know how that works, but you get the idea. It's like, okay, so even if you're not purchasing these items, and if this is unattainable to you, then you can do the next best thing, which is still frequently just as stupidly financially expensive. So this is the problem that I'm having with the American dream, as it were, because I think that you forget at a certain point, like, you're watching TV. Like, I think that's a huge problem with the latchkey kids, such as we are, such as I was. Like, you are so bonded with, like, oh, everybody, like, the perfect encapsulated, like, Full House family or whatever. It was like, okay, so this is, like, the baseline of stuff that we're working for. Like, this is what household in America look like. This is what, like, everybody's going through X. And you sort of learn, like, for me, like, that was a huge part of my window into, like, what other households were. Because, again, it was being, I think, largely overprotected for good reason. Like, my dad was not a good person, and my mom was always like, hey, you need to stay where I can see you, and, you know, some of that is very, very reasonable, but there was a very real concern for a significant portion of my life where I was kidnappable, that I would be kidnapped, and that was a whole different thing. So I was allowed to go, like, next door, or, like, with a couple of different households with, like, parents who thought similarly. And then there was the television, because, again, you're talking about a time where there was no social media. Like, the way that things are now is just baffling, because, like, this is such a window into, like, the social injustices and the everything else that we're seeing now, the political downfalls of people. I think I really don't envy like people who are growing up with too much information, but I think that there was a place for me where I should have been, like, there should have been a different series of conversations to be like, yeah, wouldn't it be cool if blank, and I don't mean it in the sense that I ever forgot that it was fiction. Like, yeah, TV and movies is TV and movies, but I still thought that there was a level at which, like, okay, your ratio, if you grow up in the style that I did, watching that much TV and watching, you know, the way a limited number of households operate, and comparatively, you still think that there's like a baseline that's different, where like there's only like the bad people in the world, or like the evil people in the world are outliers, and like whatever. And obviously, like, that is just simply not life. Like, I think it's a huge problem that I don't even know what could have been done, should have been done. I don't know how it could have been assessed or corrected, but like for me, that was like the realization that other people were still going through things that like I thought had been solved already. Like, I couldn't believe that some of the things were still going on, like, to the extent that they were going on, you know, in and amongst people of a certain age. As you get to high school, like, people are doing any number of stupid things, and I don't want to get into that right now, but I'm saying, like, the abhorrence of, like, let's litter everywhere, and let's do, like, things that are fundamentally, like, there was still so much information out there about what to not do, that the idea that they were still being done was not. I think that that's part of, like, the huge reason that I struggled with migraines for so long, because I was so stressed out and I literally couldn't understand. Like, there was a period throughout, like, middle school and high school where, like, I could not articulate enough how much I just hated school, or I hated a certain amount of people, or, like, I hated a type of person. But so much of that was because I couldn't fathom, like, there was no comprehension of how things were still so bad outside of certain places that I had physically been in as a kid. And then you realize a lot of different things as an adult, where, like, for me, as a child, I remember vividly hating, like, I would love going to summer camp, and I would love going to, like, day camp and whatever. I would love doing Girl Scouts, love doing stuff with my cousins, and some stuff with my nieces and stuff. And I would hate, like, literally hate those changes. Like, for me, it seemed always really sudden. It was like, okay, well, here you go out the door, and here you go getting picked up, and here you go back out the door again. And I understand that as a single mom who's working. Like, this is what you do. This is what family does. This is why it takes a village to raise a child. But, like, I remember vividly being like, I left my Game Boy at somebody's house, and it would just be like, oh yeah, well, I guess they're fucking mailing it to you, or, like, we're not, you know, it was just, I don't think that I would change terribly much. Like, there are a couple of households I really wish I had not spent so much time in, and I really wish had not left such a huge, like, glaring emotional mark on me, but there's very little, like, I understand what that was. Like, I understand, obviously, as an adult, you realize, like, daycare is fucking arm and a leg expensive. Like, so free childcare wherever you can get it is still free. Like, but there was so much time alone outside of, like, I very truly feel as if it was, oh, okay, let's pick Erin up, or let's go hang out with her, and, like, I would go somewhere for the weekend, or go somewhere for whatever, and, like, it was, whether it's how it actually was or not, like, my perception of it currently is, like, let's take, go pick her up out of the toy box, and then let's drop her back off in the toy box. Like, I felt so selectively wanted by people. Like, okay, you can come over for the party, or you can come over for whatever, but ultimately it was still like, yeah, and you're back home at the end of the day. And then, like, I think that really truly carries through to a lot of what I expect, or how I view what is and isn't okay to do with me as a friend. Because I super definitely have severe attachment issues, and I think abandonment issues that I've been really, really working on. That is not something that there's always linear progress on, but it is stuff that is being addressed and things that I'm aware of, and I think even being aware of those things is huge. So because there was such a high amount of time, either it was 100% hands-on with my mom, or 100% hands-on, like, what are we gonna do today with somebody else, or plenty and plenty of time alone. Like, those were like those three things. But I felt either constantly bounced around somewhere, or bored out of my mind. And it wasn't that I wasn't reading, it wasn't that I wasn't playing outside and stuff, it was just like this severe, sincere boredom that comes with, like, you have a parent who's older, who can't do mobility things. Like, you can't really expect them to take you to a playground and they're not going to play with you. Like, it was always watching me do stuff, or, like, the most interaction we had that was like an activity was watching television and movies together. Again, thrilled to have had that time and to have had those experiences, but I think that because she was an inactive person, like, I was definitely, there became a point where, like, my health was really a lot more jeopardized as a kid than I feel like I would ever want to do to another person, because that's just another stress thing, that there was always junk food somewhere. Like, there was always Entenmann's, breakfast stupid things. I'm trying to think of the word. Strudels, Entenmann's breakfast strudels, or, like, things that should not have been even thought of or brought into a diabetic household, that it was just either like, yeah, this is what kids want, or this is what Erin picked out, or, like, well, this is the stuff off the commercials, and it's like, the amount of like Pop-Tarts and like really like the toaster strudels and like fucking top to bottom fresh frozen junk food that was available, it was just it's stuff that to me currently is unfathomable and unthinkable to put in a child's body. But again, generationally, you're talking about my mom grew up with like her only vegetables were from canned food, and her pound of hamburger had to go split between 7 to 9 people amongst siblings and stuff. And like, I'm trying to think of the best way to say it, but really like I think that once my mom could buy things on her own and could purchase her own food, she sure did. Like, she purchased her own food and purchased things that she wanted when she wanted them, because there was such an inability to do that and select your own food in that setting. I think that once she had the ability to purchase her own food, she did. I think that pertinent to my current recent life circumstances, like let's say starting with like the year before the pandemic, like I thought I had the most rock solid core group of people in my life. Like, I know that I had falling outs with people. Like, I'm not delusional. Like, people don't like me and that's fine. But even with those circumstances, such as they were, like, I felt so sincerely and had been told that, like, yep, this is the group of friends, and no man, woman, individual, refrigerator, or pet, like, nothing will tear us under, and, like, totally, like, bomb-proof friendship group. And I think that at some point, like, once I do get comfortable and once I do finally let down, like, my 17 million layers of PTSD and I start to feel comfortable with somebody, like, I will not... I'm trying to think of the best way to communicate this. I sincerely hope it's coming across the way that I mean it. But, like, once I am comfortable, I will take somebody's word as exactly what they have said to me. So, when you have somebody continually tell you things like, we're always going to be there for you, we're never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down, like, whatever flavor of crap, like, somebody, unfortunately, like, these are things that just people say, and the standard to which they are accustomed to having held up those ends of the bargain previously dictates how willing they are to throw those things around. Like, we will always be together, we will never whatever, and I will always have your back, and I will never tell anybody X, like, whatever individual, like, life experience or stuff that would remain private is stuff that will always remain private or was told to you in confidence. Like, I will take things so super linear and literal once I feel comfortable. And I don't know how that's going to affect me in the future, because I think that leading up to the pandemic, I certainly had a lot of other traumas I was processing. I had a failed relationship that I don't, I feel like there's no like big crazy feelings about that, but just like the acknowledgement of like, okay, that one didn't work out, but surely like this one is bomb proof, and this one will always and never and always and never and always and never. So I think that before the pandemic, I already had put so much of myself into other people's lives, and that's not super evident right here on this channel right now, because like I said, I privated a bunch of content as I'm figuring how to readdress and rebrand, I guess, like whatever. I'm not quite sure the direction that this channel is going to go in the future, so at this time a lot of stuff is privated. So I hope that makes sense, and hope you're following along here. I did beforehand, and I absolutely, to the nth degree, have in the last 3 years now, since the start of the pandemic, has put a big magnifying glass on it. Like, I will overextend and overbend and topsy-turvy myself, because that's what I expected, was like, love is directly correlated to the amount of time and stuff, time, emotions, positivity, nourishment, whatever, that you put in. And I mean that in a super sincere, remarkably literal, sincerely, severely way of my friendships as well. It's the friendship is directly correlated to the exact amount of time that you spend together, the exact amount of time that they're texting you back within a day or texting you back within a few hours or whatever. It's directly correlated to that quantifiable amount of energy that person has put in. So for me, I will always, I have previously always historically overextended myself for the benefit of other people. And when it does come time for me to like really need to vent to somebody, really need to articulate things, it's really challenging, because I don't feel always that I have a good scope of what is taboo in certain rooms or you don't talk about. Like I'm aware of some of my social ineptitude, I guess. So, like I said, it does take a long time for me to get comfortable with new people, but for me, like, once you're my friend, there's no turning back. No, I'm just kidding. But, like, for me, I do not ever differentiate. Like, there's no tier of friendship. Like, if somebody is a good friend that I've hung out with, they are on, like, layer of friendship. Or, like, again, this is an oversimplification, but like once I do get comfortable with somebody, they are on the exact same par across the board with everybody else. I have, unfortunately, been on the receiving end of friendships with hierarchy where like the core group of fucking whoever went to high school with each other, and then like so like those people, and then like the women that accompany them, and then like whatever orbit of whomever else, but like that is the core group of thing. It is remarkably alarming to me that there is still that. Like, I, as a human being, feel like that type of mentality of like, this is my absolute best friend who can do no wrong, or like, that's the worst person ever and she did X to me, like, particularly in like the sense of like, this is my third best friend, or this is my coffee every fourth Tuesday friend, or like whatever it is. I don't do that personally. And unfortunately, that's been to my detriment because I will assume that somebody cares about me the exact same way that I care about them. So, arm, leg, left kidney, like whatever I'm putting in, I directly correlate that to what will be returned by that person. And that's... I understand the concept of like... Subsequently, I've learned these quotes really just like in the last couple of months. It's like, if you're a 10-gallon person and you're pouring all 10 gallons of yourself into somebody, and somebody else might be a 5-gallon person, and that's okay too, but like, you can't expect a 10-gallon person to be satisfied with 5 gallons of water. Like, there are different needs for different individuals. And I think that's also, like, there's the correlation of like, you don't judge a fish by how well it is able to climb a tree. So, I am really stuck at this point in my life because I feel lost. I feel violated and hurt because of the misunderstandings that, like, I feel like I've been clear as day about certain things, and people think like, oh, I'm kidding, or oh, that's adorable, or whatever, but like, I sincerely feel that that's how things should be. I'm understanding now that that's not how things are going to be, but I clearly feel like that I have this very black and white thing that I don't know quite how to articulate yet. I'm doing my best, and I'm hoping to evolve a good way to talk about that, but I really truly just don't have that right now. There are parts of my life where I've had, like, this is my daytime job and this is my nighttime job, and like, there are behaviors that go with those to say, like, there was a part of my life where I really felt like I was going to grow up to be Catwoman, or like the Alias Sydney Bristow character, or like the other example of that is like the Evangeline Lilly character from Lost, Kate, whatever her last name was, but from Lost. So like, I was always either I was just like somebody who was places. Like I would either be bartending or doing whatever, and like I just was either on, even on somebody's arm at a different point. Like I was always somewhere kind of like absorbing stuff. So I learned how to do a lot of different things, that I learned how to exist in a lot of specific situations, like specific types of parties, specific social events. Like I learned a lot of the fundamental, like Stepford, truly just Stepford, Sylvia Plath or whatever, like level of this is what you do for holiday parties. So I'm remarkable at like, I know where the olive forks go and the shrimp forks go, and I know where your iced teaspoons go, and like stuff that not a lot of people my age, I believe, not to discredit those who do, but like I believe that not that many people grew up with like their mom telling them at like 7 or 8 that they put the forks out wrong, or they folded the napkins wrong, or not how she liked them. Like I very specifically know like what a red wine glass looks like, what a white wine glass looks like, what specific elements look like, and how to do things the right way for specific occasions, I guess. Excuse me. And then through house parties and whatever it was, I felt truly, fully, deeply, madly about myself that I had this remarkable availability within myself. Like I had the ability to mesh within and kind of do this seamless transition from one type of area into another area, and that came from like I had 4 different jobs at one point while going to school. I had stuff I was doing. Some of it was less than great, but like I was doing what I felt that I needed to do at that time. And I now feel like I question, because I haven't had, I feel like within myself, I realize, I think what has been fully going on is that I haven't maintained a lot of the, like, I think it's ridiculous that people from high school would ever still hang out together, but that's also because of my limited interest or limited, I'm like searching for the words here and I just can't quite. I don't know. I'm hoping I can figure out how to say this best. Like basically because I felt I was going to continually ascend the ladder, and like there was no way that somebody with my skill set and somebody with my whatever was going to be, again, not how I think currently, but like a bum who's stuck here in the same town or the one town over from where she went to school and when she went to high school and stuff. Like it was never my goal to be in one area. So the idea that like you got to high school and fucking settled and like that always to me felt like I don't know. There really isn't a great way to say that other than what I already have. There's no new information I can add to that that's going to make it sound better, but that was my belief for a very long time. Like, I think it was more like, why would you hold each other back collectively? Why would you not put your friends in check and like help you guys need to all grow up together? Whereas, like, people are content to be those same people. Like, I think that there is an over-encouragement amongst that situation, those situations, because it's not a unique situation. Like, this is apparently a thing that I've seen across all corners of TikTok and YouTube. Like, guys just fucking get together and have the lowest standard ever for each other, and it's supposed to be fine. Like, yeah, don't act differently when you find out, like, your friends have sexually assaulted somebody, because what's a little sexual assault between friends? Like, this is what, we're still gonna get together and play cards. Like, let's just... But even in just, like, a much more mild way, like, why would you not want to be in a different circumstance where, like, you're okay, you can be the same group of friends, but, like, do new shit, or, like, become better grown-ups. Like, you're just being the same, and I have never had any interest at any point in my life in being or remaining the same. And that causes people frustration and confusion. And for me, like, I feel like I've always wanted a consistency that I can't articulate. And I feel like within myself, I really feel like I've asked for so little that like, I know that some of this has sounded I think that some of this has sounded like haughty or like, you know, I'm better than everybody else, but that's not what I mean. Like, I feel like I'm regularly there at whatever level my friends are. Like, I will get down into the ditches and annals of, like, what has happened, okay, what do you want to do about it, okay, how do we get you there, okay, and, like, do it. Like, I will help them from top to bottom to sideways, from Timbuktu to Sydney, Australia. Like, I will do those things for those people that I care enough about to do those things. And it takes so long for me to articulate what I personally need as an individual. It takes so long for me to even recognize that there is a need for me within myself, that by the time that I talk about it, it has become an emergency situation. Which is... I can understand where some of the frustration would be within that, and it's not something I'm not willing to work on, but as of right now, that is the situation where I will voice that I need. I have voiced that I need support, I need things to change, things can't go on the way that they are. I will re-articulate, I need better assistance, I need more assistance, I need different things, like, hey, let's go get coffee, beer, whatever. okay, like, starting to send, like, thinking of you texts and whatever, and hoping to receive those, like, the fact that I'm reaching out continually, like, that is my bread butter of this is me reminding you that I exist, reminding you that I care about you, reminding you that I also need, like, this is a give and take situation. So when those people don't hold a similar priority, interest, ability for time to be spent with me, and haven't articulated like what's actually going on, because maybe they also don't have the ability to process their own emotions, or maybe they just fully can't articulate that they have such little disregard for me, or like they are maybe like distancing themselves while thinking that I'm gonna like take a hint, where I personally would love to be able to develop that, but like I always think that I'm giving people the benefit of the doubt, but at a certain point I'll be like, this is frustrating, like we're supposed to be on a friend level, on a together level, on an understanding of like this is what we are, friends, like where have you gone? So I'm talking in generalizations here because this has happened to me like my entire life. And it's been across friend group after friend group. And I really thought, again, pre-pandemic, this is bomb-proof situation. And there's also like a recognition within myself that like, because once I'm at a certain comfort level, I will take things at face value, like the way that they're told to me will be the way that I perceive them, will be my baseline for like what you've said is going to occur, needs to occur, because any unanticipated or unarticulated changes to those things, I have a difficult time processing. I'm trying not to be too hard on myself and also not too hard on other people. That's really been my goal for this video. Like, I really don't want anybody to leave this video being like, oh, she really didn't like her family or really didn't like whatever. Like, I'm just telling you these are my experiences. This is why for me, I feel have gone from room to room to room, because I'm trying to find something that apparently, like, I'm learning I may never find. Like, I'm learning that there is no definitive forever, there is no whatever, there is only like, oh yeah, in a perfect world, like in an ideal situation. But I can't live to be relegated to that. Like, I can't live to be like, you know, you're a perfect friend and you and I would be great together if we lived in Narnia. Like, whatever it is, like, I can't be relegated to a shelf. And I don't know, like, I've gotten to the point within myself where I'm fully, I believe, I would like to think, going forward, that I'll never be overextending of myself again, but I don't feel like that's true. Like, I would love to think that I will get to a point where somebody will say like, oh yeah, you know, me and whomever, like, have had X go on, but we co-parent really effectively, and like I need to understand that those things fluctuate, and that like where those things might have been true previously, if it ever, like where that might be the goal, and the thing that you tell people, like please do not tell people that that is the bare base, like everything is fine, things are even keeled, like we figured it out, whatever, and let's try and keep things easy peasy. Like if those are not things that are followed through on, like I don't understand, I fully do not understand the underlying hostility. I would much rather have somebody be like, I hate you, I cannot whatever, but like tell me also as it's going along, like I also feel like I wish people would let me know, like, hey, this thing that you said, did you mean it this way or did you mean it that way? Because I feel at this point in my life that because of the traumas that I'm trying to process, I don't have the ability to put those back in a box. I feel like I have just as much of an ability to, and just as much of a need to, talk about myself, and that took me an enormous amount of time to learn. So to then ask somebody to continue to make themselves smaller to make you less uncomfortable, like I can't, that will not happen. That is not fathomable and isn't correct. I've been on a really difficult journey because, like I've said, I've grown up my entire life dealing with like migraines, and like there have been other physical ailments that at this time, with my understanding as it is currently, is all stuff that points to either something on the autism spectrum, something like within like that realm, like I also sometimes have like ADHD symptoms, and there is a part of me that's like, I'm trying to think of the kindest way to say this, but like per testing that I've had in my college life and in different corners of my life, like I am remarkably good at English literature, like writing a term paper, doing artistic anything, and writing constructive paragraphs. Like I will do that to the end of time, and that is what I'll be thrilled to do. But I have a math deficiency. Like I have struggled, like in college I've had to do remedial algebra twice, which is not great. I think that it's important to have transparency about that because there are lots of other people who might also be doing that, and you have to like remind them that that's not something that they're alone in doing. So I wonder, I am at this time wondering, because I don't feel like I have the most challenging part of all of this collectively is, like, I wish I had access to medical records from people that I'll never have complete medical records for. Like, I will never have medical histories, completed medical histories for my parents at different times in their life. I would love to see, like, what were their psych eval notes, or what was whatever, and what diagnosis and what prescriptions, and like a very clear breakdown, because I think I've been told that, like, my dad was bipolar and he was rapid cycle bipolar, but the descriptions of those stories don't necessarily align with what my understanding is of bipolar. And granted, I know that it presents differently in different people, and I'm not trying to remove I'm not trying to speak for everybody. I'm saying that because of the behaviors described to me, and based on what I understand, like, bipolar, even, like, in all its different types, does not typically have, like, it's not rapid cycle within the same day, it's not emotional extremes within the same day, but that is what I understand from my own reading research videos. And that doesn't align with the extremes that were, like, crying 1 minute, groveling another minute, punching walls, and, like, following people in cars, and, like, things that would happen the same day due to extreme emotions that occurred in the same day. Doesn't align. And I'd have to, again, I'm not a professional. Like, these are things that I'm basically going down a rabbit hole on because of my own needs, wants, and my interest in clarifying what is currently happening in here. Because I fully don't believe there could be a case made for me where, like, somebody could finally sit down with me and say, like, you have antisocial personality disorder, because some of my testing up until this point has come back inconclusive, which is, even just to think back on that is frustrating. But I would rather wait an interval and get a correct assessment that I can point to than last year when I started having, like, severe, sincere processing issues, as I would call them. Because I went looking for a more definitive, like, diagnostic testing for myself the same year that my mom died, and the same year that I was also going through exceptionally turbulent circumstances outside of that, where, like, I was not only dealing with, like, the grief of the loss of my mom, but also dealing with, like, the house clean out and the legal battles, and dealing with emotionally stunted or emotionally unavailable, or physically unavailable family members during a remarkably difficult time. And, like, just being, like, the realization that, like, I'm 28 today, and henceforth, like, going forward, I can never, ever, like, pick up the phone and call my mom for advice. Like, and there's no, there's no, there's no replacement for the bottomless, like, shirt off your back last, you know, last can of soup in the fridge that she'd split with you, or like whatever stupid thing. Like, there will never be a person to replace her. And I wouldn't want that. Like, I've had people say, I think, remarkably kind and well-intentioned things, like, you know, you can, you know, I'd like to have you, you know, think of me when you're having a difficult time or whatever, but it's just, it's, you can't, even I can't with what I've tried to say, like, I can't articulate what it feels like to not have, like, somebody who was by your side in, like, a singular way, and, like, I'm... she was not a person without flaws. But she went through so much for me. For everybody. And I'm really struggling with the idea that, like, I wish that she had taken better care of herself, and I'm trying to learn through lack of example what setting boundaries of any kind really is supposed to look like. So, at this life juncture, I only have limited information that I can access, and my own memories of my personal experiences and understanding that I would have had at certain ages, like, to make up my own minds and assessments of what people were or weren't doing wrong to me. Like, there's almost no point. I think that's a really remarkably difficult space to be in. I think that what I am trying so desperately to correct in a much more immediate way now is that, like, it's not okay to just not be thought of. It's not okay for me to continually pour myself out and into other people who don't appreciate it or can't return it through and because of their own variety of circumstances. Like, I understand that before the pandemic, like, ideally somebody would be going through, like, one person would be having a hard time and then their buddy would be like, I'll take care of you, and then, like, the opposite shoe would be on the opposite foot. And, like, right now during the pandemic, what my humble, I think accurate assessment of what's going on right now is there are so many people facing so many challenges of being uprooted, being disenfranchised, facing, like, the domestic violence rate has gone up so much, and, like, people are leaning on their emotional crutches, healthy or otherwise. Like, I know there were all kinds of articles about how, like, drinking went up during the pandemic, like the start of it, because everybody was in panic mode, and plenty of people still are. Like, there's so much Wild West, like, huge gambit of range of, like, how people can be handling things right now that it's the red light, green light thing of, like, okay, not only is there a government, like, stop, go, nationwide, statewide, countywide, neighborhood-wide thing by which to abide by, but there's just in its individual households, because it's been proven that the structures that are available to us as a populace, like, it's just been feeling up, down, sideways, that we are very much on our own, household to household, and that's not good. It's not good, it's not correct. It's not, again, excuse me, but, like, it's not how things should be. It's not how things were, and certainly not what plenty of people were accustomed to. And I think that the removal of the fluctuation of, like, this person's going through a hard time now, and this person's going through a hard time now, and this person's going through a hard time now, like, there's no zigzag. There's just everybody's on a downward trajectory on whatever graph. Like, there's no yin-yang fucking happening. There's no, hey, I'll catch you, I'll be your safety net, because that person, that friend, is having whatever they're having and might not be vocal about. Like, the support of, I will catch you and I will be there for you, might still be there, like that want might still be there, but the ability to recover from burnout, physical burnout, emotional burnout, whatever, is so unavailable. So this video is so long already, and I don't know that anybody will sit and watch my 2-hour rant, or how many people will be receptive to it. This is just my opinion and my recent perspective, my so thank you for watching if you're still here. You're not alone. That's a whole different video. I have another video I'd like to make about how I know some people are handling the pandemic how they shouldn't be. I wish that they hadn't have. So I'll do that some other time. It's my mom. I miss other people. I wish that I had been more I wish that I hadn't been so meaningless. I wish that I hadn't been looked at as an accessory just because I wasn't someone's friend for as long as other people. I'm not less than because of my gender. I'm not less than because of my age. I'm not better than anyone else, but I'm not less than. And I wish that even a fraction of the forgiveness that I had extended continually to other people had been repaid to me. I need to go powder my nose.